Are investors running for the Vancouver market? Are buyers and sellers confused in the Vancouver market? Yes, my friends, yes and no, yes and no. We're going to ask these questions to our good friend Roland Kym, broker owner out there in Vancouver, and he's got some incredible insights of what's going on and perhaps some opportunities. So let's dive into it. Well, here we are, my friends. As promised, here's our good friend Roland Kym, all the way from Vancouver, and this market is moving fast. It's moving, and we've got lots of questions, and his clients has lots of questions. And the good thing is, Roland, we've got answers, or at least we know how to get the answers, my friend. How you doing?
Good, Gary, and yourself?
I'm doing excellent. We're still in that early winter Vancouver weather out here. It's raining and it's cold. I wore my winter jacket today. It's May 3rd. So anyways, we know the market is not cold. The market is hot here in Toronto and of course in Vancouver. Okay. So we got a few questions that we're going to ask you, but just give us that 30,000 foot overview. We've just finished the month of April. Talk to me about how that month looked from your perspective as a broker owner and also as a team leader, helping your team and your clients. Talk to us from that perspective.
Definitely. So we're seeing a lot more activity in all product classes. So the last one that kind of was a little bit stagnant that really has started to move in the last 2 weeks is kind of that older one bedroom market. So our team had a couple condos in a building that we had listed last fall and this January. No offers, really no excitement on them, and then relisted them less than a week ago, and they all popped, multiple offers on both of them. So it's very interesting, right? Like those same condos would have sold for maybe $20,000 less just 3 months ago. And you would have had the ability to negotiate. You would have, there was very little folks looking to write offers. And I bet you most of the buyers that wrote over the weekend were available in January. So human nature is a funny thing where they're now being told through the market and through the truth, like the market is picking up, that we're probably at this cycle bottom. And the question is, are we bouncing off here with a little bit of a price increase, or are we trending steadily sideways? That's kind of my opinion. I think we have, 2-3% growth for quite a few years ahead, but I don't see this escalation in the near term, but we'll see. But definitely, there's no part of the Vancouver market anymore that is quiet. And
Really?
The sign that I know it's getting busy is when pockets like Furry Creek or Horseshoe Bay, the communities between here and Squamish or here in Whistler, which are lovely communities, but kind of most buyers don't know of them, are starting to be brought up on people's radar. So that's telling me that the buyer is not finding the house that they want in North Vancouver or in Vancouver, and they're sitting at home talking with their partner, being like, where else can we, consider? What island or what small community could we commute from? And so that's really telling me when the buyers are starting to get creative. And I think we're in for a pretty busy middle of the year and end of year. When I'm talking with our realtors in the office, it's like it's back to the relationships that you should have always been working on. And I think it's building up for, honestly, I think next year is going to be one of the busiest ones, because I think folks are figuring out how to work with the current interest rates, and the market is just warming up.
That's interesting. So is people are moving to some of those tertiary markets in a sense, as you mentioned. Is that based on because of the inventory level, the amount of activity that's happening in that North Van area or Greater Vancouver area?
Yeah, so it's kind of like there's a few pockets, not too many, but Furry Creek's a good example between here and Squamish, where most buyers that are looking in Vancouver have never been there. You drive kind of quickly through the bottom half when you go on the highway, but you don't see what's there. And
Right.
so if you're looking at a certain budget in North Vancouver, for example, you might extend your search a bit further and be like, what's this community here, and bring me a house that is a lot more house for the same budget. And then you're going to figure out, can we make the location work? Is the commute worth it? And there's challenges such as the fact that because it isn't a main community, it doesn't have as much infrastructure. So you're going to end up commuting for your food, for your sports. And it's always interesting when those homes come up on the search. That tells me, we're starting to look further. We're trying to get more creative.
Yeah, yeah, and I know, and we were just mentioning offline that I was hosting a panel yesterday of some top realtors, and they predominantly carry listings, and they're seeing, a lot of activity on their listings, and they're also seeing, one of the early tells as well is the buyers are they know what they are capable of, and we're not seeing some crazy over ask offers. They're coming in, excuse me, they're coming in with, this is what I can offer, this is the most, and I'm not going crazy. Are you starting to
Yes.
see that here? So that's in Toronto. Are you seeing that there as well with very, we'll call it well informed buyers?
Yeah, no, it's a great point that you bring up. I almost think it's like if we could stay in this category, it would be a wonderful place to work from because I almost call it like a true balanced market under pressure. But I'm feeling that we're pushing through that and going into a seller's market. But maybe building off what you say, the same thing here is good example is two other condos that we have. The buyers did the inspection. They brought forward situations and issues with the with the unit, and they themselves kind of know that maybe if it was 4 or 5 months ago, the seller would be more reasonable in addressing some of them or making a slight price adjustment. And they also feel that there's pressure with more people behind them that are interested. And so they're pretty like conservative in what they're asking for. That it's nice to solve those problems because the seller is aware that it's a warming up market, but it's not a crazy market, so they're willing to work a little bit with the buyers, and the buyers are being reasonable. And so that is nice because everyone's kind of working to get the deal done and respecting the other person's position. We are, though, I think, months away from sellers again being able to kind of dictate some terms if it
Sure.
continues on this path. And so I think we'll move away from that balanced market under pressure more into a true seller's market again.
Yeah.
Pricing, I think, is it's got a lot of pressure to not escalate. Um, and we have a few, like we've done a change with a thing called a rescission period in BC since January 1st. So it doesn't make a true subject free offer the way you used to be able to. And so there's more variables that I think have kind of hopefully put a lid on the price escalating.
Right, right, and we should probably talk about that in depth in one of our calls.
Yeah.
Is that, from the Ontario perspective, and we call that the cooling off period, from, a pre-construction perspective, and that sort of conversation. I'd be curious though, as the months go on and as that market continues to move more on the seller side, what that looks like for your sellers and the ramifications of that. And from the sounds of it, it doesn't sound like it's, deals aren't being let go. Is that the terminology you would use there from the buyer's side?
Yeah. There was this big fear that although buyers have to operate with their best intentions, and certainly
Yeah.
realtors that are representing buyers, cannot be writing on multiple offers, tying up multiple properties when the client's only looking to buy one. But the actual optics are different from what's happening behind the scenes, and so there was a concern that buyers would just send quote unquote subject free offers, tying up one or two properties and then rescind on one of them and pay the penalty just to be able to have their selection. We really haven't seen that in the brokerage. I don't think we've had a rescission period like back out yet.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a big problem. It might, they might make a few buyers who otherwise would not have gone subject free. It might make them a bit more aggressive and say, well, I got 3 days to back out if I totally, miscalculated my numbers. I haven't been seeing that, but that is also one of the thoughts that could, it could push a few folks that hadn't completed all their due diligence and didn't know all the numbers to be like, well, I got 3 free business days to finish it.
Nice.
But so far, it looks pretty well, received and digested.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to revisit this conversation in, 6 or 9 months after we've allowed that market to go through that cycle a little bit, and get some thoughts
Totally.
there. I think it's an important one, definitely from the outside looking in, and we're feeling pressure from our regulatory bodies that might come into play. So it's really intriguing for me to follow. Okay, so back to Vancouver. And you and I both know, as the market becomes definitely that seller side of the market, and they can kind of dictate, the offers and so forth, and definitely the pricing in a sense. There's parts of our industry that rely on that type of market to sell homes. It also becomes a lot easier to sell homes when the market is moving fast, but there's a skill set. There's definitely a skill set from a listing side, uh, from that perspective. Talk to us a little bit about how and why that's so important to have that skill set and that experience, Roland.
Definitely. And I mean, a seller, the typical person might sell once, twice, maybe three times in their life. And so if you're a seller in a busy market, your home is sold and you typically feel really good. What you don't know is how much money you left on the table and maybe how a better job could have been done. And I'm already starting to see that. So taking it back to, what is the right way of doing it? So my team, we sell a house every 2 days with our realtors. And so we're constantly in the marketplace. We're able to adjust and adapt. And more importantly, when a seller asks me, what's different between you guys and someone else? The truth is, whether you as a seller know a whole bunch of things that you're asking us to do or have no experience, we're going to run the same system. We're going to, get everything planned. We're going to have the steps to a pre-listing, the photographs, the marketing, and we run it the same again and again. So we're able to replicate results and have a consistent machine that just keeps selling. You really see that in a slow market because we come out of the gate, professional and clean and operating at the highest level, and it's working. And we might have to tweak a few things, but we're never trying to catch up. And in this busy market, I'm already starting to see it where a listing agent may have not, they may have listed, honestly, the property too early and they don't have all their homework done. And because the market is busy, certain buyers agents or buyers are willing to overlook some things that haven't been done and kind of take the risk on, or the lack of the right level of marketing or steps is not you're not reaching the full potential of buyers, so your seller's not getting the full price. Great example in our market would be many of our homes that are older than 1960. There's a chance that there's an oil tank in the ground, right? And
Right.
and so for a detached house, every detached house, you should get an oil tank scan done in advance. You should get the photographs and all the measurements and floor plan, and ideally if there's any charges on the title or, you get that clarified, check with the city about any easements or right-of-ways, to figure out what the limitations are on the land. And you can definitely tell when it's a slow market, those things seem to be, for most agents, prearranged and ready for sharing with the buyer's agent. And in a busy market, I just came through this last weekend where clients interested in a property, but they're a bit more conservative than someone else. And they're getting frustrated because, first showing is Saturday, Sunday, offers are Tuesday, and half that information is not even available by Sunday. So
Right.
they just need that information, and rightly so, to be able to make themselves comfortable and dot the I's, cross the T's. And yet the seller still sold the home. In the end, we didn't write, and they still got several offers. What you don't know is how many more offers could they have had, and also the buyer's taking on a bit more risk and exposure by not having all the information.
Yeah, no, I like it. And I coach our sellers and our agents like this. I'm sure you do the same thing. Our job as listing agents is to take away as many no's as possible. And
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
exactly what you just explained to us, right? In having all of those reports available before you hit that submit to listing or to the MLS button, right?
Totally. Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's I mean, there's lots of ways of doing the job, right? So it's interesting when you're only seeing a few transactions in your lifetime, it might be hard to compare.
that's right. That's right. And one of the other interesting things, I was on Twitter earlier today and scrolling through, and of course, what's going on in the Vancouver market. And yes, that's my way of keeping up to date apart from talking to Roland. And some might say it's terrible, Gare. How are you getting your info? But it also provides me with unique perspective and questions to ask. And one of the things I'm seeing definitely in that Vancouver market, similar to here, is the headline might read, investors are sitting on the sidelines for Vancouver. However, you've got a different perspective when I say something like that. Talk to me about your experience there and definitely working with investors and what you're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. And it's always like, what's quote unquote, what is an investor? And yeah, I think in the past it tended to be someone that's obviously looking for cash flow on their money and mortgage, right? And so Vancouver has been an expensive market without real cash flow for many, many years. And so, for many years prior to this past cycle, I would be helping clients invest properties, buy properties more across Canada by sending them to you, by sending them, to Winnipeg, to other parts of the country that tend to have a lot more cash flow. And so for a certain investor, quote unquote, who's looking for a cap rate, that is the type of properties they're going to consider. Now, that hasn't been Vancouver probably for most of my career. Like maybe 10 years ago, you were able to get a small cap rate. But for many, many years now, the investors who buy locally are folks that are looking for quality. So they're willing to have a no cash flow, in some cases a negative cash flow, for a future reward. So a good example would be last fall, I think I sold about half a dozen townhouses in a complex in North Vancouver called Baden Park. And so these were townhouses, 3 bedrooms. They were, going to complete in about 3 years for about a million and a quarter. And right now, although big number, at that time you couldn't buy a townhouse that was completed in the marketplace for $1.25 million. There were slightly more. And so the opportunity there for the investor was that I will buy it. I will put like my 15% down for the next 2 years, and then I'll close on it. I will still have to supplement it because the mortgage is so high and all the expenses for about 4 or 5 years, probably around $400 or $500 a month. But my principal is going down, $1,500 a month. So I'm winning on that front. And the rent initially is about $4,000. They're excited to the fact that in 10 years time, when they actually want some cash flow, when they're, working less and they want the cash flow for their use and taxes, rent will have gone up 3% every single year. And the market value for that type of property is certainly projected to go up 3% every year. So initially it's a negative cash flow. In 10 years, you might be making, $1,500 net off your investment and growing. And it's a property that hopefully for the next 25 years really doesn't need any elbow grease. And, so that type of investment is available, but it's an expensive person's investment, right? Like
Sure.
you got to think
Yeah.
that you're bringing $200,000 to the table and you're going to have to supplement it. It's very difficult to be in that position and to be comfortable with that. But it does make sense for a lot of people who are then in their 40s, mid 40s, 50s, who, are sufficient and comfortable with their livelihood based on their income right now. They don't want to pay more taxes, but they want in 15 years and 10 years, some vehicles to help supplement their lifestyle. So those types of investing and investors certainly are around. And that's why everything, keeps selling to a homeowner or an investor. But cash flow is a unicorn that hasn't been here in a long time.
Yeah, likewise here too. And you said something really important there too, is we always think we have to have these big home runs and everything else where, it's 5, 6, 7, 10% appreciation every year. But really the big picture is, and we've talked about this in the past, offline, real estate's best looked at that long-term perspective. You mentioned it, really, if it appreciates 3% a year over the next 10, 15, 20 years, you've got that home run in that
Yeah.
time, right? Like it's if we've all had this conversation, internal conversation, man, if I could have bought that property 10 years ago, that would be sitting quite pretty right now. Well, let's go do that today and have that conversation 10 years from now, right? Like that's the way to look at
Definitely.
it.
And also like being realistic to the marketplace,
Yeah.
right? Like if we could go back in time, 10 years ago, you knew that there were still, the prices in Canada, although expensive, were in many ways undervalued for the market that it was selling to and the draw that it had on a world scale. And so prices have doubled. You were able to hit home runs several times over the last decade. But that's not the future. Like there's no one, a $2 million house in Vancouver. I know the buyer that's going to buy it. I know the household makes, around 200,000, maybe 250, and the math doesn't work, but they've saved up and it's important to them. And they're putting a lot more of their disposable income to housing. And I know, that home could sell to several different people at 2 million. In my lifetime, 40 years from now, I think it'll be 4 million, but it's not going to be 4 million in the next 5-10 years. Right. So we've just come to a place in the Canadian landscape where we're fully valued. We're not overvalued, but we're fully valued. And so it's you're not going to get a quick natural home run simply by holding. There are folks that can buy, a flip property or a burr strategy and put their sweat equity and expertise in, and you can hit bigger numbers. But for the classic buy and hold, I think we have to be really realistic to what the future is. And it's a lot more, steady, small growth, but still you're getting 100% growth on 20% investment. So show me something else that does that. But gone are the gold rush days. Like, they're not coming back. There's no gap that they could happen.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And both Roland and I, we live and we work in two of the most expensive areas in Canada. We understand that. But if that's your position, if you own a property in one of those areas, Vancouver or Toronto or thereabouts, talk to us about, leveraging that equity into other areas, as Roland explained, that make that cash flow or is more balanced. And there's other areas that we tend to, show people in Ontario and right across Canada and into, Vancouver, BC, that allow your purchase price or your investment funds to go farther from a cash flow perspective. So even though we often say, Roland, we live in, we live where we want to live, but sometimes we don't invest in that same area because it just doesn't make financial sense. So my friend, as we wrap up, how do people get a hold of you?
Find me online. Last name is Kym, Kym, Roland Kym, and you can find my different websites. And yeah, I'd love to talk to anyone about real estate in Vancouver, whether it's just a fact-finding phone call or more. Please reach out, and happy to help.
There you go, my friend. So, of course, that's Roland Kym. I'm Gary McGowan. We'll see everybody in the next video. Bye for now.